Nice to see you all. So I'm Emma Cosh, data visualization consultant, but back in the day, I was actually an operations research person, first and foremost. So now, although I mostly focus on visualization and creating data that looks really exciting and interesting and engaging, I think I have never let go of that way of thinking that operational research teaches you, that obsession with efficiency and effectiveness and the evidence base. So what I want to talk to you about today is a little bit about, once we've done all the cool, exciting modeling, once we've done our research, how do we take that further, take that into a space where we communicate it to people, where we change minds and hearts and take action with the data. So I was really thrilled to listen to Philip's talk earlier and Payal's talk as well. It's a very nicely curated morning of talks that fit together about how do we actually persuade the data from theory into action. So my obsession is user-centered analytics, user-centered data visualization. I think that right now, a lot of data visualization you might see in organizations looks like this. It's deliberately fuzzed out so you can't make out who is guilty for this monstrosity. And it's poorly designed, right? And I don't just mean that the colors are confusing and the fonts are too small to read, although clearly that's true. I mean that the person who created this hasn't sat down and thought about how will this be used? What will my end users take away from this? And that's what I mean about user-centered design. It's about thinking through those things, because design doesn't always have to be that bad. The British highway road signs are an example of incredible information design. Simple, easy to read in the flash of a second as you go by. Nobody during this design process sat down and thought, what we're going to do is we're going to put road signs on the M1 where we list every single city in the north, because we're going to have to put all those in size 10 font to fit them on the sign. And yet that's what I see in data visualization or presentation of data all the time. The people who designed these signs, they knew that drivers needed to know two important things. Am I going the right way? I don't know if anybody else has ever got on the motorway going the wrong way. Just me? You want that reassurance. You would be like, yes, I am going to the north. And hopefully I will not find White Walkers there. And the other thing you want to do is be able to approximately locate yourself, right? Maybe I got on the motorway half an hour ago and I'm kind of lost a sense of what time it is, but the distance to these major cities will help give me a sense of how much progress I've made. So what I want to do, what I want to argue for, is applying the same kind of good practice, the same kind of focus on what's important to users in the presentation of data. Because we use data visualization to make life easy for ourselves. We could just present giant statistical tables to our boards, to our executives, to our management teams, and persuade them that they can make good decisions with those tables of data. I mean, I'd rather not do that. I think maybe most people would rather not do that. The purpose of data visualization is to make it easy to gain insights from data, right? To make it easy to make good decisions. Data visualization is still a pretty young practice, and there is a huge range of different types of visualization, different purposes of visualization out there. So this is a visualization that I could just look at it for hours. It's a representation of one of the arias in Mozart's Marriage of Figaro. Isn't it pretty? There's something about circles that humans just love. It's like deeply reassuring and comforting in some way. In what way does it represent the marriage of Figaro? I have no clue. Is there a key to help me understand it? No. Would I hang it on my wall? Absolutely. So, you know, the range goes from that, which is beautiful, but perhaps not useful for decision making, to this, which is, I clipped out of The Economist a little while ago, which is incredibly useful, and I feel like has some important insights to share with us about the patterns in deaths from terrorism. But I find somewhat difficult to pull out the insights because of how it's laid out and labeled. And so what I want to argue for is that by putting the user at the heart of your design process, you can end up with something in the middle, something that is valuable, something that is easy to understand, and something that is aesthetically pleasing. Again, you're not supposed to be able to read the content of this slide. This was handed to me by a client a little while ago, and it was actually a 7-foot roll of paper, like this, and it was unrolled towards me and said, Emma, these are all the problems we have with our website, online shopping process. We know, we've asked the users, we know exactly what the problems are, this is all of them, but we don't know where to start solving them. And I was like, oh, yes, I'm not surprised. It is really hard to make out any sense of priority or impact in that wall of data. So what I did is I took all of that content and I broke down the shopping journey into 7 stages. And then I represented each problem with a circle. I color-coded the circles. I can never remember which way around it is. I color-coded the circles for severity. So red is, this has a huge impact on users. And I sized the circles based on the possible impact, like the fiscal return if we fix the problem. So immediately, my product director was able to say, oh, we need to focus on the big red balls. I was like, yes, those are the ones you need to look at. And it's just a really easy way of using our pre-attentive attributes, right? The things that we can immediately see and understand in a visual way is differences in color, differences in size, and groupings, proximity. These are some of the design tools that we can use to help people understand the data. And of course, we hadn't lost any of the richness that was in my wallpaper roll. It was all available on rollover and click-through. What this was an aid to decision-making, an aid to funneling people's attention. Because, I want to break it to you guys, we're really lazy. Oh my God. We will make decisions with as little information, as little attention, and as little work as we possibly can, okay? Daniel Kahneman calls this System 1 thinking. Right? He splits the way we process information into System 1 thinking, fast, judgmental, pattern recognition. System 2 thinking, considered, logical, evaluation. We will do everything in our power not to activate our System 2 thinking if we can possibly get away with it. Case in point, has anybody read Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman? You are all immediately proving yourselves as better and more attentive than I am, because I started to read it, and I was like, this is dense. So I read the summary that I found online. It was only 15 pages. I feel like I got all the major points. So this is the kind of question that I think we should be talking about as analysts, as data people, as modelers. When we are sharing the results of our research, when we are pitching for money, when we are trying to explain how a model works. Wow, there's a lot of amplification if I stand behind those mics too. Is that a bit, can you, I don't know if it's an issue. We want to be thinking about how do we engage people's emotions? What emotion are we wanting to draw out of our audience? Do we want them to be excited about our cool new model? Oftentimes that's what I want. not everybody thinks data is cool. That's something I've had to really make peace with in my life. Do we want them... I feel like my necklace is causing problems here, hang on. Do we want them to be afraid because disaster is coming? Do we want them to feel disgusted at some injustice in the world? What emotion do we want to provoke? Because it's by engaging people's emotions that we flip people into this system 2 thinking, that we flip them into really carefully considering what they're looking at, really digging into understanding and making sure that they're taking account of all of the widest implications as possible. Feelings don't happen by accident. They happen through design and creativity. But I don't mean you need to be able to draw. This is the limit of the drawing skills you need to be a good designer when it comes to data design. I rather like this little elephant, it's quite cheery. I think that oftentimes, particularly in the UK, we think of art and science in a very separate way. I've definitely had analysts say to me, no, I don't know anything about art, I don't know anything about design, and kind of be proud of it. And I'm like, no, you don't understand, you're being creative every time you build a model, every time you look at data or a problem and you take it apart and you deconstruct it and you reconstruct it in a way that makes sense to you, makes sense to someone else, and makes sense to the data. That is a creative process. So I think it's very harmful to think of art and science in a separate way. It's all trying to dig at the same problem, the idea of connecting, the idea of creativity, just with different tools. So you don't have to be able to draw to do good user-centered design. What do you have to be able to do? You have to be able to listen, and you have to be able to ask good questions. So we're going to do a little experiment. I'm going to get you all to raise your hands in a minute, but don't worry, I'm not going to pick on anyone. Like, audience participation is my nightmare. Very stressful. So what I'm going to do is ask you a couple of questions and just raise your hand depending on which one applies to you. So raise your hand if you think you're a good listener. Yeah, good amount, nice. Raise your hand if you think, well, maybe I'm actually not a great listener. Yeah, good. Some nice, honest people there, nice. Raise your hand if you have not yet raised your hand. 100% of people have just demonstrated that you have the skills to do this. You listened to my question, you thought about yourself, you answered the question. This is what question asking and answering is all about. It's about considering yourself, considering the other people that you're working with. And about building empathy, right? It's about really taking the time not to do this, not to be separate from your user, but taking the time to sit with them, to understand their problem in the way that they describe it, not to try and solve the problem that you've got the best data for, which is kind of disappointing, I know. You have to save those projects for your personal time. The thing that you need to consider, I think, or that we all need to consider, and that I have to remind myself of in every project, is that whatever you're presenting, whatever model, research, data analysis you're presenting is being launched not into a vacuum. It's being launched into an organization or a community that already has knowledge, already has a set of expectations, already has a set of norms and culture. And you need to be cognizant of that so that the way you present your data and your insights doesn't necessarily have to fit with them, but if you're going to challenge them, you definitely need to be aware of it. When I started out as an analyst, I'm sure it's all fixed now for analysts, right? The data preparation, data munging processes were incredibly unwieldy. Systems didn't talk to each other in the right way. We never had enough time to do any quality assurance. No one has any of these problems now, right? And so that would result in, I had to send out this report on a weekly basis. And I would wait till like 5:05 and then send the email to all of the directors and like run out of the office. So no one would ask me any questions, because my identity, my sense of worth, in some ways had become entangled with being right, with having the answers, with being evidence-based. And yet the system that I was working in had made that incredibly hard to do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And so it was just deeply stressful. And the way that I dealt with that stress was not great. It was just to be like, okay, bye, see you. Because I knew the questions would come. I knew that people would be like, wait, why does this figure look like it does? And I'd be like, oh God, I don't know. But what I would like to propose is that we get comfortable with being wrong. And luckily there is a discipline that will help us do this. User experience design, taken from digital product development, the same space that Agile Thinking comes from, that Payal was talking about, is all about getting to the wrong answer faster. You can let go of that sense of need to be correct right from the get-go. You can sketch out rough ideas, organize things, and then talk to your users and start to really understand what they need and what they want and whether they're comfortable with it. And then you iterate. As Payal was saying, you get those little loops of iteration and improvement. So UX designers are incredible at this. They do this all the time. That's the Tarzan figure here. I'm not suggesting that as analysts we need to develop the same depth of knowledge that a UX designer has, but there are many things that we can learn from them. Like, this is me in the back, like running behind the UX designer, like picking up the tidbits, taking on board what we can from their approach at getting to the wrong answer faster. So what are these aspects of UX design that I think we should be using in the way we present data? When I work with users, it's very kind of diagnostic. It's like sitting down in a GP office and I say, okay, tell me about your problems. What problems do you have? Let's dig into those problems. Let's think about how this data that we have might be able to solve those problems for you. And then crucially, tell me about what having data might change for you. What action might you take on the back of this data? Ask about emotions. What are you afraid of? If I do this analysis for you, what would be the most terrifying thing that you would find in this data? It's an amazing question that you should definitely ask next time you're doing some analysis. What are you excited to find? What would really prove your thesis? So these are the kinds of questions that I ask. What I don't do is let them tell me what they want. Oh, I want you to demonstrate that my advertising campaign was cost effective. No. I want you to give me sales figures for the last 3 months by geography. Why? Get used to saying why. Because when you do that, you can come out with a bunch of user needs. And when you understand what the user wants to know and why, and crucially, the context in which they're making this. So are they a marketing manager who is building out a list to send a new marketing email? Are they a department head who's trying to figure out, do we have the budget to recruit somebody? Am I going to have to let people go at the end of the year? These are very different contexts and frequencies under which you're going to make decisions. So you need to really understand those user needs. Then sketch it up. This is just a picture of a dashboard that I was building for a client. They wanted it to be readable on a mobile phone. So I sketched a little picture of a mobile phone, put the charts in there. Then you can sit down and have a conversation. You can sit down and be like, does this meet your needs? Do you think if you saw this chart, it would help you make those decisions? It would help you take those actions? And crucially, I can draw 20 of these in a morning and not feel emotionally invested in any of them. But if I have spent all day arguing with an array formula in Excel or fighting with a database connection before I can put together a draft, I'm going to be so invested in my first solution, it's going to be really hard for me to listen to a user and be like, sure, I'm very happy to throw this away and start again. So what you're trying to do here with this sketching process is kind of remove your emotional investment from that initial idea. Get happy with being wrong. Get to the wrong answer faster. There is no way your first sketch will be right, but that's cool. You'll come up with another sketch in discussion with your users. Organize your page. Websites, well, good websites, are a great example of this. This is a clip from the Guardian website a little while ago. They are using color and white space to group ideas together on the page. They are sequencing ideas in terms of order of priority. They are using different sizes of fonts to help you understand what are main points, what are sub-points. I would never really suggest that you had a PowerPoint slide that looked like this. It's a little bit busy, but I hope that you might have a dashboard that looks a little bit more like this. Imagine every image was a chart and every text was a comment on a particular chart. And the only way you're going to know how to organize your page effectively is to, guess what? Talk to the user? Yeah. And you might have conflicting ideas, or you might have users with conflicting ideas about how you should do it. And that's okay too. You can get them to, put all of your bits of insight or research, write them out on bits of card and get all your users to organize them in a different way and then look for the commonalities, right? This can be an evidence-based design process. It's the part I like. Once you get into the visualization, I would think simplicity first. Build the most simple charts and visualizations that you can. There is a lot of very beautiful, very complex data visualization out there. I would not reach for that in the first instance. Build up from simple concepts. And then even if you do end up with something deeply complex, make sure you step people into it in a way that they can understand. Don't present all of the data all at once, because they'll just be like, wow. And the emotion they'll have, I can tell you right now, they won't tell you this, but they will be like, oh, I feel stupid. And they will definitely not want to engage with what you're saying and what you want from them. Think about, oh, didn't realize I had that all on build. Here we go. Think about what the underlying grid is on your page, on your report, on your PowerPoint slide. If you put things on a grid, they're immediately going to feel aligned, feel organized, feel like you're deploying your charts and comments with intent. It's going to make you look 100% more professional. And then, of course, testing. Test these sketches back with your users, build prototypes, test those back with the users, see what they understand, see what they don't understand. Even if it's, you're presenting your findings to your team at the monthly meeting, sketch out what you think your slides might be and go and chat to your different team members and be like, does this story arc make sense if I present this chart and this chart? Would that help you get the sense of it? What do you think is missing for you? You'll be amazed at how their questions and their thinking can really form your own structures. And then, of course, build, which is the bit that you guys are already excel at, right? You've got the technical competence, you've got all of the tools at your disposal. But I hope that this session has persuaded you that before you actually turn on your computer, before you open up your tools, you should be engaging with your users first. So I guess all that remains is to be like, well, what would be a better way of doing this? So this is one way that you might want to present the data that was contained in that giant, ugly spreadsheet. So what that was a price check comparison, and it had price checks against 6 different retailers on the same page at the same time. So some of the visual design decisions that I made when I was putting this together, that you might want to think about in terms of good practice for visual design is removing clutter. We've got 6 different retailers on there. Well, why not put those 6 different retailers on a drop-down list and just look at one at a time? Elevating important information. In this design, you have the analytics to understand which products at which retailers are really showing a decrease in success, and we elevate that to the text boxes at the top. We're using some pre-attentive attributes in terms of the length of bars here to understand which areas our products are significantly more expensive than our competitors. We're using color intensity to do the same thing, right? We have that dark red as opposed to the pale colors, which are the categories which really no one was interested in. And then secondly, there were 2 different types of measure in this. You would never have guessed it. There was very little to visually indicate that you've got 2 different types of measure there. So what I've done in this redesign is actually pulled it out into 2 different types of chart. And on the right-hand side, you have an index comparison between the retailer of interest and the competitor. So I hope that's just like a whistle-stop tour of kind of user experience design and some of the things that you might want to think about when you're presenting your data. I don't know, that's all from me. I hope, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Ask me more questions if we don't have time for too many just now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.